You did it! Congratulations!
A decent Picard episode.
Great job, everybody!
Oh, wow. Could it be? Could it be? Star Trek Picard is actually getting good? Now, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of things to dislike about this episode, but there are plenty of things to like, which is a massive step up from the last two episodes and the last two seasons of Picard. So, Picard, episode 3, actually felt like Star Trek again. You know, it was an interest. There was smart dialogue. There was engaging character interactions and development. There was actual ship-to-ship maneuvering and combat and tactics, and there seemed to be actual stakes involved here. There's actually seemed to be consequences. Things progressed naturally until we get to the bad points of the show, which again is Raffi. Raffi was pretty much the only weak link of this episode, barring minor, defying physics type of ideas. But with Star Trek, you kind of have to let that go. You can't be too picky about it. But all in all, an actual enjoyable episode of Star Trek again, not just Picard, of Star Trek. This was a reasonably good episode of Star Trek, and an amazing episode of Picard. Yeah, I mean, Picard's levels are like down here normally, and this was like up here. I thoroughly enjoyed 90% of it. Seeing the characters back in the right places, almost in the right places. We get Picard and Riker back on the bridge in a weird role reversal where Riker's the captain and Picard's the number one. And we see that interesting dynamic, that shift in power and how it's played. And then we see Worf back. Worf basically carrying the whole Raffi subplot, which just begs the question as to why she was added in the first place. I still think she's got to have some kind of smoking gun on an executive somewhere, or the characters added in and written to make the other characters look good. Like, she's written so poorly, and the whole plot is so pointless just to make the other characters and plot seem better, which it does, but it's still not good. Like, the Raffi plot is, if they'd taken all the Raffi bits out of this episode, it would have been amazing. But yet again, she comes in and just grinds everything to a halt. Everything she says and does is just eye-rollingly cringy. She's so bad at her job. This is the character. The Raffi character is so bad at her job. She needs Worf to basically do everything. Worf literally, like, holds her up physically and from a story point of view. Without Worf there, she would be pointless. Like, actually pointless. Anyway, she was a small blip in an otherwise fantastic episode. So, I would say if you're a Trekkie fan, this is an episode that you're going to enjoy. Yeah. If you're a Picard fan, then, I mean, you'll enjoy anything, but you'll really enjoy this. So, let's break down the episode a little bit and go through some of the points which I liked and some of the points which I didn't like. So, straight off the bat, I'll go back to my review of episode 2 where I said that there was going to be some nonsense reason why Beverly never told Picard that Jack was her son, and then Picard was just kind of going to accept it and move on. But he doesn't. And we get a showdown scene between Picard and Beverly, which is just written and acted brilliantly. Patrick Stewart absolutely nails it. You can feel the anger and resentment coming off of him in waves as he's asking her, why on earth didn't you tell me about Jack? And she comes up with her reasoning essentially down the line of you would never be able to let the universe or the stars go. When the stars come calling, you would always answer and you'll always be in danger. And Picard basically just turns around and says, well, you never gave me the chance to decide for myself whether or not things could have been different. And you can just see the anguish in his face as he's realizing that he's missed out on a whole life. He's had that life taken from him from someone he considered probably one of his best friends and, like partner, is like lover. She's taking the chance of him having a family out of the equation. And she tries to justify her reasonings, and he's not taking any of it. He is not having any of her bullshit. He is giving it back to her, left, right, and center. And it's just it's a wonderful scene. It's a wonderful, fantastic scene, acted brilliantly by both sides, and there isn't really a conclusion at the end of they don't just sort of kiss and make up at the end of it. There is still underlying tension and hurt there, and you can see it throughout the rest of the episode. So obviously this whole episode is kind of basically around the idea of father and son, about because Jean-Luc doesn't really feel like a father because he hasn't been a father to this kid for any time, and this causes conflict between him and Beverly. It causes conflict between him and Riker, and because Riker is pushing him to say, don't waste this time. You're a father. Don't waste any moment you have with your son. Go and be with your son. And he's like, he's not my son. The damage is done. Like, we might have had a chance, but he's not my son. I'm not his father. But Riker, who's looking at it from a point of view where he's lost his son, and he knows what he would give to have any moments or any time with his son again. And Picard, in this particular instance of Picard, doesn't have that, though. I was remembering there is an episode of The Next Generation where Picard does live. It's a very weird episode. He lives a whole lifetime in kind of like a holodeck stasis dream. He lives an entire life where he has family, he grows old, he's married, he has grandchildren. He lives that whole life. It all takes over the space of like a day. He lives an entire life in his memory. He's still got those memories in his head of having a family. So maybe that makes it even harder for him because that wasn't his family. He was reliving the memories of somebody else. But maybe that makes it even harder for him because he knows what it could have been like. He knows what it could have felt like to have a family, and it was taken away from him. So he's resisting the idea at this point of having Jack, being Jack's father, but Riker's pushing him. So that's causing this conflict between the two of them. And then obviously the conflict between Jack and him is kind of just this sort of weird tension. If you didn't really know your father, God knows what Beverly was telling him about his father, because at one point she says, I gave Jack the choice to meet you, and he said no. Now, if Beverly's been telling him about Picard and basically what he was really like, how he was loving and caring, he always looked after his crew, he was a good man, you would expect him to want to, and he must have heard, if he lived on Earth, he must have heard about Picard, because Picard's this legend in Starfleet and Federation, so he must have heard about Picard, and we don't know his reasonings for not going to see Picard, but when he was older, he could have thought Beverly could have told Jean-Luc as well, like maybe when the kid was older, like, you have a son, I've told him about you, and it's up to him if he wants to come and meet you or not, but she just leaves it, and it makes her motivations for contacting Jean-Luc even more bizarre, because she contacts him because he's the only person she can trust with her life, but she didn't trust him with her son's life. mean, she didn't trust him enough to tell him about her son, their son, but she trusts him enough. But at the end of the day, he is literally the only person she will trust when she comes down to like being in danger. So that the two things don't really mix there, and this is where the writing staff, when they get it right once, they've got it wrong another time. They basically, in the space of 2 episodes or 3 episodes, really contradicted themselves, pretty badly, and they've written it. They write it in a way. They write it episode by episode, it seems, whereby they don't ever think about what the things they're saying now, how they're going to impact on things they want to say in episode, 2 or 3 episodes down the line. They write something which they think is good for that episode and that episode alone. And that's not how you write a series like this. You have to think, and you have to plan ahead, and you have to think carefully. If I say this, that means I can't say that 2 or 3 episodes later. But they don't think like that. Anyway, for this episode alone, the writing is great. So you have the conflict with Riker and Picard, which is brought up again when Captain Shaw gets injured and he transfers command to Captain Riker. Because Riker is the only one who's still part of Starfleet. Picard is retired. So when he transfers the power, it feels like when he transfers the. It feels odd when he does. Shaw gets injured when they're being attacked, and it feels odd because it just feels like he's spitting his dummy out a little bit. He's like, well, fine, you take over then. If you're so good, you do it. And he's just sort of he's been kind of hobbled off to the sick bay, and it turns out he is actually quite badly injured. But the way it's said, it just makes Shaw look like he's just spitting his dummy out a little bit. Had he been knocked unconscious, and then the medical officer said, he's unconscious, I'm transferring emergency command authorization to you, Riker. That would have been better. As it is, it just feels like he spat his dummy out and said, you do it then. If you can do such a good job, you do it. I'm away down to get treated. And he's kind of taken off, hauled off, and then it later turns out he is quite badly injured. But the scene that he transferred the power was just a bit silly. So anyway, Riker's in command. He sits down and you get this cool little interaction between Riker and Picard, where Picard says, you better call me number 1. Remember, I used to call you that. So you got this role reversal of like, Picard was obviously used to be the top dog, and Riker would be his number 1. And there's definitely some butting head. Picard's got his idea of how they should approach this. He's like, just attack. We need to fight back. And Riker's like, no, we need to run. We need to get out of dodge as quick as possible. So they've got these competing ideas, and Picard's not used to Riker basically being in command, I think. So there's just there's that feeling of, well, you used to work for me, yeah, and you're not listening to me now. But Riker's like, I have the safety of this crew to think of. And I think even if Picard was in charge, like Captain Picard, like if this was the Enterprise and it was Captain Picard, I think he would want to run. Not like he's running away like a coward. He's like, I need to save my crew. We're vastly outgunned, and I need to save my crew. So it'll be interesting how that dynamic plays out, because when eventually it comes out. So they're being, they're in the nebula, and they're being tracked, and they're wondering how the hell are they tracking us? And it's Jack that basically figures out that there must be some kind of trail that they're leaving, like breadcrumbs. And he tries to go to the bridge. As soon as there's any resistance at the point where, because you can't go up there, it's red alert, he just walks away, like, at least if you tell the guard, maybe I've just figured out some possibly life-saving information for everyone. Can you even radio up to the bridge? No. So then he goes to 7 of 9, and even though she's under lockdown, the guard just lets people in because she says it's okay. It's like, she's the prisoner, in effect. She's been relieved of command. She has no command over you. Maybe he's just doing it out of respect for her because he respects 7 of 9, the guard. Who knows? But he's definitely not following orders. So they go in, and you see a cool little Voyager statue, which I thought, or Voyager little figure, which I thought was cool. You know, because 7 of 9 obviously came from Voyager, so I thought that was cool. So anyway, Jack tells 7 of 9 his theory, and because she was a Fenris Ranger, she must know all these tricks. You're like, yeah, well, I mean, the people in Starfleet are supposed to be the best and brightest, so you think they would be able to figure it out, but no, it's up to Jack and 7 of 9. So again, 7 of 9 still has a communication channel open to the bridge. You think she would just radio up, but no, they have to go sort it themselves. So they leave to go and find this leak of this gas. And as they're exiting the door, Jack kills another guard. He straight up kills another guard. He knocks him out, and that guy falls. He's about 7 foot tall, this guy. He knocks him out with one punch. Pretty crappy security guard if he stood there with his hand behind his back waiting for a punch. But Jack punches him, knocks him out, and the guy hits the ground, smacks his head. He's definitely dead. He's killed him. That's 2 guards he's killed. And Riker's told him at the start, like, of the episode, give these people a reason to want to save you. He's killed 2 of them already. Not the best way to endear yourself to the people who have risked their lives to save you. So he's killed this other guard. Fine. They go to find the leak, and they find the leak, and there's some Deus Ex Machina written in about how the computer was turned off, or some nonsense, or some crap, where the computer could never have figured out this diagnostic, or something. Some nonsense. Computers today can find things on ships and leaks and everything. Like, imagine a computer 400 years in the future. It's just... They do the same thing again. They do something again in the medical bay later on, which is just stupid. But so, back to Jack and 7 of 9. They find the leak of this poisonous gas. It's poisonous to humans. So they mask up. 7 of 9 fixes it. And then we see the true villain of the piece. Now this is where the writers get credit, because this villain is not one I would have thought of, but it really ties back to other Star Trek lore. And it turns out that it is a rogue faction of the Changelings. The Changelings, if you remember, were introduced, I think, in Deep Space Nine, and they come from the Gamma Quadrant. There was a Worf makes a reference to one of them, an honourable man, which is probably Odo, most likely Odo, from Deep Space Nine. And unfortunately, the actor Rene, I think it is. I wouldn't even try to pronounce the surname, but Rene, I think he's dead. Which is tragic. So it would have been good to have him back. But he was the guy who could never get his face quite right, like, because he didn't grow up on the Changeling planet. He grew up with the Bajorans. He never really learned how to do faces, like human faces, so his face never really, you could always tell he was a Changeling. Whereas the other Changelings are adapted it, and they can be whoever they want. So this leads back to saying when Beverly's been chased and attacked, she's been attacked by Klingons and Romulans and Federation, and it wasn't actually any of them, it was the Changelings. So I think that's cool. The Changelings are an interesting enemy. The Federation has been at war with the Changelings before in the Dominion War, and that was settled, but this is a rogue faction apparently. So it turns out it's the Changelings, and we basically reveal our enemy. We don't know. I don't know if Vyac or Viadict, whoever the girl captain on the strike is, I don't know if she's a Changeling or if she just works for them. We'll see. Anyway, so Jack's injured by the Changeling, and he's taken to sickbay. And this is where you get the named piece of the episode. The episode's called 17 Seconds, and it comes from when Riker was being told that Deanna was giving birth to their son, and there was complications. He took the turbo lift down to sickbay, and it took 17 seconds, and it said it was the longest 17 seconds of my life. But it was in that moment that I realised I was a father. And that's what happens to Picard. Picard's told Jack is injured. He goes on a turbo lift, and he goes down to see him, and it's in that moment he realises that he is his father. Like, he realises that he's his son. So you get the bookmarking of the 17 seconds, Riker's experience and Picard's experience. So by the time Picard gets down there, he feels like he's a father, and he obviously he's desperate to find out if Jack's okay. So he gets down and they find out that Jack is okay. Well, they save Jack. So that's good. So seeing again, Patrick Stewart really absolutely kills it here. I mean, he's a terrific actor. Patrick Stewart's a terrific actor, and he can turn it on when he wants to. I think when he's given the right material. The garbage stuff that he was given in the last two series, I can understand why he sleepwalked through all that, because that was dog shit. This stuff, he's producing good stuff. So that was all the good bits of the show. And some of the bad bits, anything to do with Raffi slows the whole performance down. They really could just jettison her right now. They've got Worf. Worf does all the work. He does all the work. He figures out who the person who's killed who paid off the Ferengi. He finds him. The guy literally walks right behind Raffi, and Worf has to tell her to turn around and look after she's given him like a jibe for, why are you here? And he's like, well, I'm doing your work for you. He's then actually directing her around this marketplace to find him, which to the point where I actually thought, this is odd. This is going to turn out that Worf is involved somehow, because he's given her such detailed instructions of where to go, and she's just useless. She can't be that useless and he be that knowledgeable. But it turns out she is just that useless, and he is there to save the day. Worf captures the guy and he saves the day. Then they're interrogating the prisoner, and Raffi's just getting right in his face, talking about how she's going to torture him and do all this sort of stuff. And I just think, get out. Honestly, just get off the screen. Stop talking and let Worf do it. You have now done your job. Only thing you can now contribute to this is to die. But I have this horrible, horrible, horrible feeling that they're building Raffi up for some sort of redemption arc where she's going to save the day. And I swear to God, if Raffi is the one who is the hero of this piece, I'm done with Star Trek. I am done, because she needs to be gotten rid of. Yeah. Anyway, so Worf figures out that he's a changeling, and again, this is where the writers they just dig themselves into holes unnecessarily. You meet Worf and he's doing this Tai Chi and things, and he's like, I don't kill anyone anymore. I don't kill people anymore. I don't believe in violence. You can solve all your problems without violence. Literally every problem that Worf has had in this season, in this episode, he solves with violence. He kills the Ferengi in cold blood, stabbing them from behind, which is very unhonourable, not Klingon-like at all. He body slams the perp through a table to capture him, and then when he's revealed to be a changeling, he just shoots him point blank range, disintegrates him, just gone. And you're like, what happened to this non-violence? Literally everything you've done is violent. So it just doesn't. They didn't need to say he'd gone down a non-violent road, or if they did want to do that, at least then attempt to make his character non-violent, make him attempt to be passive. Like, it was done better by Rampage Jackson in the A-Team. This non-violent person, when he was playing B.A. Baracus and he'd gone to non-violence. And then when he did eventually, at the end of the movie, do something violent, it's like, yeah, that was redeemed. You could have had Worf basically not doing anything violent and actually making him a hindrance almost. And then at the end, when it comes down to push or shove, when it comes down to my family, like my crew or you, it's you're going down, and he does something, he kills the guy, kills someone. That could have been an interesting story, but they've gotten rid of that. So now if he does anything like that, it's like, well, you've been doing violent things the whole way through, so it makes you no payoff. And another thing is just sort of nitpicks. When Captain Shaw's on the first of all, the medical lady has been a total bitch. The doctor on the Titan has been a total bitch to Beverly. Like, we're so consumed by injuries, and she's like, okay, well, can I help? No, fuck off. I'm like, all right, okay, just stand over there. It's like, I'm a doctor. I was a doctor on the Enterprise for 10 years, maybe more. Like, I have training. And then when Captain Shaw comes down, she's basically again like, do you need help? It's like, no, fuck off. The computer says he's fine. It's like, well, the computer doesn't know how to do this. And she pushes on his stomach and says, is this sore? Oh yeah, he's got internal bleeding. You tell me the computer couldn't figure that out? The computer couldn't figure out he's got internal bleeding, but she can by poking him and saying, does that hurt? And then the doctor's like, oh my god, he's got internal bleeding. And you're like, well, yes. Also, there's this trail of blood that he's left along the floor. So it's there to obviously make Beverly look great. And you're like, I still think she's a bitch from the whole Jack situation. But, okay. It just makes the rest of the crew look incompetent rather than her look amazing. But anyway, those are nitpicks. So as a round off of this episode, definitely worth watching. If this continues in the trajectory like this, then the show is got a good chance. There was another thing which I thought was actually just reminded me. The ship, the Shrike weapon that was unknown, is this portal weapon, which is apparently not the thing that they really wanted to steal from the Daystrom Academy. That was just a smoke screen, something else, or for stealing something else. But this portal gun is cool, but also stupid, in that when they try to escape, they fire a portal off in front of the Enterprise, and it then brings them right back. And like, that's a cool little dynamic. It's like a cat playing with a mouse. Yeah. So instead of destroying them, they're just stopping them escaping. Like, boof, they fire into and then they come back again. But there's one scene where they fire the portal, like, way in front of the Enterprise, and the Enterprise just goes into it. And you're like, could you not have just turned? Like, you can look out the window and see this huge portal quite a bit ahead of you. Just turn a wee bit, and then you would have missed it. Strange. That was strange. But again, it did a cool thing where they basically make, and I don't understand why they do this, like, because the Shrike could disable them at any point, I feel, but the Enterprise, once finally Riker has no choice but to fight, because they've basically run out of options, so he has to fight, and Picard's been pecking at him the whole way through, fight, and he's got no other option but to fight. So eventually he does fight, and he fires his torpedoes. But then they use the portal gun to basically bring the torpedoes back behind the Enterprise, not the Enterprise, the Titan, and it disables them. And I thought, so why did they bother doing that? What was the point of that? It looked cool, and it must make the Federation feel stupid because they basically shot themselves, but it didn't seem like it was necessary. The Shrike could have done that at any point. And that then leads them to fall into the nebula. Well, the nebula is a bit of a mystery at the moment, because it's not a nebula as such. It's kind of an unknown anomaly, and it's got bio signs as well as electric signs. So who knows what this thing is? The nebula is actually not just a nebula. It's not just a backdrop for this chase. It is probably a pretty important story element, which hopefully we'll find out a bit more next week, because they're falling into this nebula, which doesn't really... Oh, there's a gravity well at the bottom, that's it. There's a gravity well pulling them in. I just wonder if this is another version of the Great Link, where the changelings all sort of live together in liquid form, if this is the terrorist version of that. But who knows? Anyway, this then leaves Riker to lambast Picard to say, "You've killed us all." When, to be fair, Picard was telling you to attack from the first go, and you waited until the very last possible second to attack. So it's not really Picard's fault. Like, you had literally no other option. Your plans to escape had all failed. Your warp drive was done, because there was the saboteur, the changeling, on the Titan had blown up a panel which stopped their warp engine, so they had no warp. They were doing it on impulse power. They had no choice but to fight. So it's not even capped like he was doing Picard a favour by saying, "Well, we'll try your technique then." He had nothing else to do. He could have just stood there, I suppose, and got shot himself, but he had no other option. So to get mad at Picard seems odd. Like, because it did, and it felt like they were leading up to this, like Picard maybe being the changeling. And because this is what they wanted all along, it seems. That they wanted the Enterprise to fight back. Oh, not the Enterprise, the Titan. They wanted the Titan to fight back. And I thought, this is... Picard's going to reveal himself to be a changeling, and the real Picard is somewhere else on the ship. Unconscious. That's why he's been a dick to everyone. But no, he wasn't a changeling. He got told to bugger off. Because he's killed us all. And you're like, fucking hell, Riker. That's a bit harsh. He was telling you the only way to escape, and Picard wanted to escape. He didn't want to fight. He wanted to escape, but he thought the only way to escape was to fight. And Picard knows, like, the ramifications of being a captain, and like having all these crew's lives in his hand. He knows this, so he doesn't do it lightly. So I thought it was a bit harsh of Riker. Maybe a bit on it. I know Riker was just pissed. I think he was just pissed off at the heat of the moment, because he's like, fuck's sake, this woman's kicking her ass at every turn. And now we've literally shot ourselves in the foot. And we're all done for. So, and it's his command. So he's the one that takes ultimate responsibility. So we'll see how that dynamic plays out next week. And I hope that... I hope we get back to the original lineup. Like, the original Picard is in charge. I like Riker in charge, but I think if you want to go back to the way... you had to get Picard in charge somehow. I think Riker needs to, at some point, be like, look, this is not going to work with me and you sort of battling for command. So you have to take command. We'll go back to the formula that worked. You in command, me number one. I don't want Picard to take command or Riker to get injured or some nonsense and Picard has to take command. I want Riker to give him command back, to be like, you're in command. But we'll see. All in all, a good episode, and I'm really looking forward. I'm actually looking forward to the next episode, which I haven't done at any point during any season of Picard. I've not looked forward to seeing the next episode, but I'm actually looking forward to seeing the next episode. So if you are too, or if you hated this episode, let me know. If you thought the episode was good, let me know. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe below. Tell me your thoughts. And until next week, see you then.